Alright, so it's been a minute since I actually made these and I am so excited to do it again. These are bushmeat birria tacos. So the game meat I'm using for this recipe is Warthog. This particular portion is incredibly well preserved and is just perfect. I season it with barbecue spice, MSG, and this sass looking smoked paprika that I got off the streets. The color just looks off. I mix the spices in nice and proper, set it aside for a bit, and move on to the sauce. The original recipe calls for these specific Mexican dried chilies, which I can't find around these parts. So I just scoured Soweto Market for the least spicy dried chilies that I could find. I deseed the larger chilies. I then add them to a bowl and soak them in hot water so they could soften up before blending. I then toss some coriander, cumin, bit of cloves, a star anise pod before pounding them into a powder with some black pepper as well. I then proceed to char one onion and the tomato, and then to a blender I add the chilies, the charred onions and tomatoes, 4 cloves of garlic, half a cup of apple cider vinegar, the toasted spice mix, a good amount of salt, tomato paste, and blend it until it is a smooth paste. I add about 3 tablespoons of cooking oil to my pot and proceed to brown my bushmeat. Once it's brown on one side, I flip it so it could brown on the other. And after it gets a good browning on all sides, I take it out and in with the sauce. I must say, last time I made this was more of a tomato than a chili sauce. But I decided to go the authentic route this time, despite knowing very well that there will be hell to pay at the rear end. I deglaze the pot with the sauce before adding the meat back in. I stir the meat in before closing it up and leaving it to do its thing. Meantime, let's make some tortillas. To a bowl, I add 3 cups of flour and a teaspoon of baking powder. I whisk it up before adding half a cup of melted butter. I'm using salted butter, so I'm not adding any extra salt. I go in with a cup of hot water, just adding a bit at a time. When the dough comes together, I take it out of the bowl and onto my work surface to knead. I knead the dough until smooth, cover it with a kitchen cloth and set it aside to rest. After 30 minutes, I unwrap the dough and proceed to divide it into 8 pieces. I form those pieces into balls, which will help us get circular tortillas. A dusting of some flour, and then we roll out the dough. I flip it after a few rolls so we don't end up with an oval-shaped tortilla. I roll it to my desired diameter and thickness, then transfer it to a pan for a toast and a bit of color. I take them out and make sure to cover them up so they can remain moist and pliable. After an hour in the pressure cooker, the gravy is looking different and the meat is super tender. I transfer half the meat to a bowl and leave the other half for the But Me Shima people. I shred the meat up nice and proper, then go in with a couple of ladders of the consomme. I almost forgot to throw in that word, consomme. I grab my tortilla and dunk it in the consomme real quick. I transfer it to a pan for like a light frying of sorts. I go in with some grated mozzarella cheese, the shredded Warthog meat, some diced up onions, more cheese, then close it up and leave it on the heat for about 30 seconds so the cheese can melt. I then serve these beautiful birria tacos on a plate with a side of that consomme for extra lubrication. A quick dunk and then we feast. Ladies and gentlemen, this may be the best recipe I've ever made. I know I say that for a lot of my recipes, but I mean it once again today. Shout out Andrew Santino.